All right, welcome to the Fit Agent Show. With me today, I have somebody that I look up to in multiple aspects of his life, not only his business, but his fitness, and is an awesome dad as well. Sean Nealon, welcome to the Fit Agent Show.
Cancer, thanks for having me, man. I'm stoked to be here. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
I know it has been. It has been. For people that don't know who you are, which honestly, you kind of be shocked, but for people that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into real estate?
Yeah. I've been an agent for 7 years. I've been a team leader for 5 of those years, two different teams. So I've built two different teams. I got into real estate. I was fresh out of the credit repair world. I was doing that for about 5 or 6 years. I was a regional sales rep. I would travel the country. I ran a 7-state territory at kind of my pinnacle. And I would work with mortgage professionals mostly, but also a lot of real estate agents. And, you just have so many conversations with those guys. They become friends with you and you learn so much about the business. And I was doing really, really well, in my late 20s in the credit repair business, but I started getting really burnt out on travel and being away and just, when you're on 80 flights a year, it gets to you, especially sustaining that for 5 years. But when I knew it was time to switch into something else, I figured either mortgage or real estate were probably the two most logical things. I had a really good just knowledge base about how both industries worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like it was a really good segue from what I was doing. It's a similar industry. It's a little bit different, but there's a lot more opportunity to grow and kind of build something that you want. So I actually flipped a coin. And up until this year, I always said that it landed on the wrong side. Like I wish it would have ended on the mortgage side.
Yeah,
But now
yeah.
all my mortgage friends are like,
Hurting.
they're
Yeah.
in deep, man. And we're still getting real estate transactions. So here I am 7 years later as a real estate agent and running a team. And it's been a journey to say the least.
Awesome. Well, and you're
Yeah.
not only just running a team too, don't you have investments and you're flipping properties and doing kind of all aspects of real estate, right?
Yeah. I mean, my bread and butter is helping people buy and sell. That's what pays the bills. But yeah, I do. I run a team. We've got 5 other agents on the team. My previous team that I ran, we were at 20 something agents at our pinnacle, really big mega team. And, I moved brokerages. I felt there was a better opportunity. I felt there was a better opportunity to go smaller,
Yeah.
and just build more agents up. I'd rather have more volume with fewer agents than a ton of agents with little volume, right?
Yeah.
Um, Less headaches, I guess.
So your
But
team is more like a Navy SEALs of agents kind of thing, like more just like
yeah,
high producing agents.
absolutely. Yeah, we're the black ops of real estate out here.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, but no, I do have some active investments. I'm working on a house hack right now that actually turned into two projects. I can kind of get into how that happened.
Sure. Yeah.
My first two, like house hacking slash Airbnb midterm rental projects, are all happening at the exact same time, kind of by chance,
Yeah.
uh, God's will, if you will. And yeah, I've got another duplex that I manage. And I think over the last year, I've flipped 3 or 4 properties.
Okay.
Very minor flips, but really profitable flips. And I've wholesaled in there as well as part of that flipping. So yeah, I think in this kind of market, and this well, I mean, because you're doing a ton of business and you run a big team and you guys are really in the market, you got to get creative with your streams of income
Absolutely.
coming in, because it's not 2021 anymore.
No.
And I was just telling some friends, man, what I would kill to go back to that market.
Oh,
But this part market serves its purpose too. And I've just found you have to be a lot more creative and be willing to do deals that you normally wouldn't.
yeah. I think that's a huge thing. Is it's the education, it's the know-how, and when it comes to coming across these different opportunities, are you always presenting these three different options? Like when it comes to like a cash offer versus listing, like are you making sure that you talk to your clients and your sellers about the different options they have available?
Absolutely. And I think that's what separates me from a lot of agents. A lot of agents go in there with a fixed mindset. The house is worth 500,000 because the comps say it's worth 500,000, right?
Mhm.
Well, what's the seller's paying? Do they need to be out of the house? Is there something that's getting them out like very fast?
Yeah.
If so, maybe a cash offer might be lucrative to them. Sure, they're not going to net as much money, but it might solve a big problem for them.
Yeah.
And that could be a huge win, right? So you always have to explore that option. But then there's also the seller that's willing to take a little risk. And I've got a background in I've worked with a ton of investors in my day. And when I was getting up and off the ground, I knew that I took a credit repair mindset to real estate. And what I mean by that was I would travel to another state and I would meet mortgage professionals.
Okay.
And I learned very quickly, like I could call one mortgage professional and set up a meeting with that person, and I can go out and see them, and I would have a one-on-one face-to-face, right? Or I can contact a branch manager and I can meet with 8 loan officers, right? Everybody in their branch by setting the appointment with the branch manager.
Correct.
So kind of same amount of work, same
Yeah.
amount of phone calls, same amount of words coming out of my mouth, but I'm, times 8. It's obviously a lot more effective. So in real estate, I've tried to take the same approach, and how can I get multiple transactions from people? So it just seemed logical my first couple of years in real estate to work with investors. So a lot of my background is working with people who fix and flip properties. And when you're working in that a lot and doing 30, 40 transactions a year that are flips,
Yeah.
you really start to be able to analyze a property and say, okay, well, this property is worth X today, but if we invest 15 grand, 30 grand, 45 grand, we can increase the property to this.
Correct.
And I've got a lot of people who, with a little hand holding and a little direction, we can recommend some really great things to do to their property to increase the value.
Yeah.
And if they want to invest 50K to maybe make 100K, seems like a pretty good deal.
Definitely.
So I always try to provide the good, better, best option for people. And most of actually every single one of the flips that I've done, or wholesale transactions, wholesale transactions that I've done, is because I've offered 3. And they've wanted to go for the cash offer because it suits their need for a number of different reasons.
Now, has your risk tolerance changed at all with the market kind of changing in the direction that it has, with interest rates jumping up and inventory coming up a little bit too?
Yeah, anytime I take on a property, I have to look at it. I've got my main exit strategy, right? So I'll tell you, the first one I did was about a year ago, actually. And there were multiple exits with this property. So I purchased it where I purchased it. I knew I could put about 8 to 10 grand into it and significantly increase the
Oh, that's
price.
it. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was easy, man. It was a bread and butter house in a hot neighborhood. And my conversation with the seller, because I had a listing agreement with her, and it was her mom's house, but there was so much emotional attachment to it. But in order to get it ready for market, there was about 8 to 10 grand worth of work.
Got it.
And it was junk removal because the house was just full of stuff.
Yeah.
It was paint. We had to refresh the paint. We had to replace a couple light fixtures that didn't work, and then just a general cleaning. And the house was really dirty. So I mean, the cleaning alone was about $1,500.
Gracious.
But she told me, she's like, I just don't want to go through all that. It's too hard for me to be at the house she grew up in.
Yeah.
See all this stuff happen. Like, the house was in such disrepair that it brought her a lot of turmoil to be in there and go through all that. So I said, well, I'm willing to offer you this for the property, and I'll do all this myself, but just know I'm going to list it here. And if you're okay with that, we can sign an agreement stating that, I'm disclosing this to you. You're going to net about $25,000 less than what you would if we do this yourself and we put it on the market. She agreed to it. And yeah, I went in there, just did a couple lipstick items, ended up selling it for a really good profit. But I also knew if I wasn't able to sell it, it would make a killer rental. The numbers worked out to where I would cash flow, not a significant amount, but a couple $100 a month, which is actually really good in the Colorado market if you're buying something new.
Okay.
And then push comes to shove, I had an investor that I could partner with to do a full flip, which would have netted me, a good return. Yeah. But hands down, the best return was plan A, doing a little bit, putting it on the MLS and finding a owner occupant buyer who went in and took it in a little bit of, disrepair to so.
Well, and you wouldn't have ever known that unless you, again, offer them those multiple options. Is that something you're like continuing to practice with like your entire team too? Everyone's trying to look for those different options and strategies when it comes to what's available.
Absolutely. And reason being, it's not so much that people are going to take you up on one option or another. I mean, 95% of people are going to go with option B. Get my house ready to list. I don't want to do a bunch of work. I'm not going to sell it for less than it's worth. So you
Yeah.
take away, cash, you take away the fixing. I guess they're fixing and flipping their own property, right? Take
Right.
those two away. Most people are just going to go middle of the road. But the fact that you're offering, if I'm going up against three other agents and I come with three different CMA reports that show three different scenarios on how we can get it done. Oh, by the way, if we're going to renovate your house, you don't have to lift a finger because I've got the contractors, I've got the painters, I got the plumber,
Mhm.
and I do so much work with them. We can start next week and we can project to be done in 3 weeks or 4 weeks and create them a full calendar on what that would look like, right?
Yeah.
They're probably not going to go with that option, but it just sets me apart because I was willing to do all that work up front.
Absolutely.
So I think, and that's something that I do tell my agents is show up better than whoever your competition is,
Hmm.
memorable in some way, because we're in that market where people, they're going to justify who they list with based off of the percentage fee that the agent is charging. Because most of us do the exact same freaking thing, right? We don't come in, we don't differentiate ourselves, we don't put any zest into the listing,
True.
we don't try and go above and beyond. And that's no fault of our own, right? Most people just haven't been taught. I think I
Yeah.
was blessed to be put in a position where I was able to see dozens of renovations happen and I learned what good ROI is, right? But another way that saves my clients is like a lot of, I'm sure your clients do this too. Hey, I've got 15 grand. I was going to do this and this and this. And they're items that don't necessarily translate to more dollars in their pocket.
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
like, hey, if we can redirect those funds, I can turn that 10K into another 25K on the sell side versus spending 10K and getting the same sales price.
No, 100%.
So
What are some of the biggest things that you see, like putting that money towards that really makes a bigger impact in the home's value?
mhm. Yeah. So when it comes to cosmetic items, I think paint is always your number one ROI.
Okay.
And I'm talking interior and exterior. I really believe that buyers make a majority of their decision when they pull up to the house.
Hmm.
So if it doesn't look good from the street, they're going in with a negative attitude,
Yeah.
especially in this kind of market. And I don't know how different it is where you're at versus where I'm at, but we're seeing a lot of concessions here where
Hmm.
sellers are giving up money and providing
All the
concessions
time.
for interest rate buy downs.
Absolutely.
Um, Buyers are going in there with an attitude that they can negotiate pretty hard because they can in this market.
Yeah.
And if a property is not beautiful from the street, they're already going in with that negative connotation and they're going to go in and nitpick everything, right? So paint, spruce up the landscaping. And then from there, I do really simple things that make a huge difference. So a lot of times it's changing out doorknobs on all the doors in the house.
Okay.
Like if I've got those brass knob doorknobs versus
Sure.
a nice, black or stainless steel, um, more modern, updated knob,
Yeah.
people notice that when they see like the old brass stuff or the dated doorknobs, they think, oh
Yeah.
man, there's work to do.
Yeah.
But for 20 bucks a knob, I can go and literally swap those out and it's a whole different appearance, right? Painting doors, painting cabinets always goes a long way. Some flooring, like if we can put like a nice laminate floor that doesn't cost a whole lot instead of some carpet,
Uh-huh.
completely changes the vibe of the showing. Lighting fixtures. I can't say this enough. Like you get those, those old like nipple lights. They've got
Oh,
like it's
got the
like the
boom
glow
lights. Yeah. Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
People hate those things, man. So
Yeah.
if you can go in, literally, you can go on Amazon and they've got like these disc lights that have a nice like black or
Yeah.
stainless, like a
Super sleek
bronze
look.
type
Yeah.
finish, and they cost like $60. Like throw those in
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
I always have them replace all of their light bulbs with the super bright daylight bulbs. Bring the outdoors in as much as possible. People want bright. Bright means bigger, right? So
Yep.
super easy fixes like that we'll go in and do. And then cabinet pulls. Like cabinet pulls make a huge difference. If you swap out those old, or maybe you don't have a cabinet without pulls, put something modern on there, really changes the buyer's psychology.
Yeah.
And then if we still have money in the budget, we're going to look at plumbing fixtures. Can we really inexpensively swap out some plumbing fixtures? When I sold my house, I had these old chrome genie lamp looking faucets in my bathrooms for
Uh-huh.
$80 a piece. I got two super modern looking black finish faucets that really just added to like the final finish of the bathroom. So stuff like that, you don't have to spend a lot, but it goes a super long way.
That's that brings up a kind of a great point too, is like it's knowing what to spend it on. And like what we were talking about before we even hopped on here is not only like your education when it comes to how to flip a house or where to put your money into it in order for you to get the biggest return, but also knowing the contract and showing your value in that sense, I think is super valuable now, especially with everything that's out with like the real estate lawsuit and our commissions kind of being chased after, and a lot of people really arguing, is there really a value to the real estate agent? And I know like one thing that you're super big on is knowing that contract in and out. What are some ways that you've really helped like your clients win over the last couple of months when it comes to knowing the contract? And like what would you advise other agents to whenever it comes to learning about contracts and really how to work through them?
That's a good question. So I don't know what it's like in North Carolina, but we have a 17-page contract here in Colorado.
Yep, ours about the same.
And yeah, and it's literally like most of it's irrelevant, right? Most of it doesn't apply to the transaction. But if it's ever happened in a real estate transaction, it's in our contract. If there's ever been action brought to our real estate board, it's in our contract now.
Mhm.
And we have to account for it. So knowing the contract inside and out, especially in today's market, because right now we're seeing a lot of buyers get cold feet and they want to terminate, but they don't have the right to terminate. Right. So making sure you truly understand all the potential ins and outs and what's a valid termination, what's not a valid termination. I mean, that's just like real estate 101 in protecting your client.
Mhm.
And then same thing from the seller side is knowing what they can do, what they can't do. And I'll give you a perfect example. There was a situation recently. So a couple of years ago, they made an adjustment to our contract. And we used to have what's called a loan termination deadline, which was basically, it was the last out that buyers had before closing.
Okay.
And the verbiage on it was it was specific, but gave all the power to the buyer. It basically said, if the buyer is not satisfied with the terms of their loan in their sole subjective opinion, they can terminate and get their earnest money back.
Wow.
So what we would see is we would get sellers and buyers under contract for 27 days through this contract, closings in 3 days, and the buyer says, "Oh, I've got cold feet. I don't like my loan terms," and they would terminate and get their earnest money back.
Yeah.
So that was causing, a lot of turmoil for sellers, especially if they had a contingent property or
Sure.
they're buying so many different things, right? So they went in and switched the contract, and now we have a loan availability deadline. And the verbiage in that states that the loan has to specifically be declined by a financial institution, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then you don't have grounds to terminate. And then it eliminates a lot of the different reasons why you could terminate due to loan. It can't be due to appraised value. It can't be due to loan terms,
Yep.
aka your down payment, your interest rate, the points you're being charged, etc. So it's
Mhm.
very specific. And I had a seller it was about a month or two ago where the buyer's loan was most likely going to get declined,
Mhm.
but it hadn't been declined. They terminated prior to the decline of the
Got it.
loan, and it didn't actually get declined until like middle of the week, the following week.
Yeah.
So with that, we were able to enact the clause that, hey, this is wrongful termination.
Yeah.
We'll give you two options. Either A, you can continue to work with us. We can revive a contract here in Colorado. We can do a contract revival,
Okay.
and you can work with a lender who can get the deal done. Or option B, you can terminate, but we're keeping your $5,000 earnest money.
Got it.
And they elected to stay terminated, and we kept 5 grand,
Yeah.
and it, helped pay for my seller's, I guess, time that he was off the market for 2 weeks.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
um, and it's nothing wrong that the other agent did. They were just acting under the assumption that that termination was what it used to be. But
Correct.
those minor tweaks to the contract that happen on a yearly basis, you have to stay apprised to that, and you really have to know what's in there, especially if you're, our job as an agent, like a lot of people think it's just opening doors and showing houses and the glitz and the glamour that we see online. We're actually a fiduciary for our clients. We're
Certainly.
here to protect our clients so they don't make a financial mistake. And
Yes.
if we don't know the contract like the back of our hand, or if we don't have the ability to interpret the contract, you're not doing your client a service at all. you should probably lose your license. I don't know. Maybe that's an unpopular
Yeah.
opinion.
No, I think I kind of agree. I think the standards for even just becoming a real estate agent are pretty low. I mean, for us, like
Oh
we can
man.
get our license in like 6 weeks. I mean, how often can you get
Yeah.
into a career that you can earn as much money as you can in real estate and be in charge of something as big as selling the person's biggest asset and be able to like
Yeah.
qualify to do that in 6 or so weeks is kind of absurd.
6 weeks. How many hours of education do you guys have there?
So the class, like the real estate class that I took, well, it was 6 weeks and it was every Saturday, Sunday. That was whatever, 16 hours, probably 90 or so hours to get the license. And then continuing
Okay.
education's 8 hours a year. And then you have to go through to get like your full broker's license or to go from being a professional broker to a full broker. That's another 90 hours, which is like 30-hour courses. And that's basically
Yeah.
required to do in the first 18 months.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's so different state to state. We're 163 total hours to get your
Okay.
associate license or
Yeah.
associate, which you can practice real estate. And then
Yeah.
if you want to go and broker, you have to have a certain amount of experience, certain amount of transactions, and then another 20 hours.
Oh, so
So
it's measured
really
on
low
transaction
barrier to
too.
entry.
It is measured on transaction volume too. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they give you a point system. So, like, if you sold a land deal, you get 5 points. If you've sold a
Okay.
residential deal, you get 2 points. So, you have to have a certain amount of points plus the 2 years experience. But that being said, I mean, continuing education can be done kind of on your laptop, right? Where
Yeah.
you're multitasking. So, it doesn't really translate to skills. So,
Yeah.
yeah, low barrier to entry. Hopefully, they change that. We've got about 40,000 agents here in Colorado. I don't know how many you have there, but way
We
more
have,
agents than transactions. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Oh, definitely here. That's for sure. What would you like to see changed like in the education department when it comes to real estate and making sure that the people that have a license actually know what they're talking about?
Well, I think just knowing the contract more,
Yeah.
like
Just
needs to be more contract comprehension testing to make
yeah.
sure that people are competent. I mean, especially like because my license, I can do a land deal, I can do I can do commercial real estate.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects to it. Like my wheelhouse is residential, but I've sold some land deals and
Yeah.
just through the complexities, like it's a completely different transaction. And I've learned that. Thank goodness I had some good mentors to kind of teach me a lot of that. But that's a lot different than a full land development, right? Like if you're scraping one lot or if you're selling
Certainly.
raw land, if you're selling improved lots versus unimproved lots. It's just there's so much that goes into it and there's such a high legal repercussion if
Hmm.
you don't know what you're doing and if you put your client's earnest money at risk in those transactions it can end really badly for you. You're going to end up getting sued, you're going to end up losing your license, um, you're going to end up hurting your client. Like there's so much that goes into it. So I just
Oh
think a
yeah.
contract comprehension course and standard to be able to truly practice real estate should be more, I think, prioritized.
I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. I've heard some nightmare stories here recently with some agents really doing a pretty poor job representing their sellers or their buyers when it comes to the contract. That had actually happened here recently in the area where someone sold a house and they were expanding the road, and that house basically wasn't going to be there by the time, like in a year or so. And like they did not disclose that. Like nasty, nasty stuff. Like you should just and you should know how to find all those things. You should know like where the noise cone is for the airport and like the road projects and this, that, and the other, because the average consumer is not going to have a clue like about any of those kind of things. So it's our job to
Yeah.
discover those things and share those things with our clients.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because the duplex that I own, it's on a major thoroughfare, and I purchased it with the intention, like I said, multiple outs, right?
Yeah.
So it was a single family home that was converted into a 2 level duplex. So it wasn't a legal duplex, but they were advertising it as a legal duplex. So
Okay.
I knew it was legal, so I was able to negotiate a little bit on that.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's on a major road in a city that I happen to be on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce. And a couple months prior to that, they came in and told us about this new widening project that they have going on Wadsworth Boulevard.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it's going to start down here. It's going to end up here. It's a 6-year project. It's going to cost about $100 million. I knew where it was getting funded.
Yeah.
This house was like the second house in on the project.
Uh-huh.
And the seller either didn't disclose it or didn't know about it, but I had knowledge of it, right? And then I was able to go to the city and find their plans on exactly how much of the property they were going to chop off the first 15 feet of the property to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
way for a bus stop and some sidewalks, and then another lane of traffic. So having that information, I was able to bring it to the seller and negotiate about $80,000 off the purchase price with that information. So it was something that it wasn't a deal to begin with because it wouldn't have cash flowed. It wouldn't have been a great, commercial investment at that price point. But once I
Yeah.
was able to get 80 plus $1,000 off, all of a sudden we're cash flowing. I was able to hit him with the fact that it wasn't a true duplex. So I was able to get a little off from that.
Yeah.
And now I've got a property that is on a commercial thoroughfare. It's zoned residential, but the process to flip it to a commercial zoning is very simple. So it has that potential for the future commercial play. But not knowing that, I mean, I would have overpaid for that property.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So
and he probably got compensated too for that land, didn't he? For widening the road and
he
everything?
did, yeah. So it actually, the city, I want to say they offered him like 15 or $20,000 for. I'm not sure exactly what they offered him for it,
Yeah.
but they took that land like it was in there, and they took it prior to the purchase. So
Yeah.
none of that was disclosed, but I was able to find the ILC and bring it to him. They act surprised by it,
Sure,
but
I bet.
I was able to touch them for it. So there we
That's
go.
awesome. Well, kind of
Yeah.
switching directions. Want to kind of pick your brain on a couple of things. One, I know you're an amazing father, and you also crush it in real estate, and you're taking care of yourself when it comes to health and fitness. How do you manage that busy schedule? What are some things that you do to make sure that you stay on track, uh, day in and day out?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to answer that is to show what's truly important to somebody, look at their calendar,
Yeah.
right? Like I could say all day that my kids are my priority, but if I'm showing up late to pick them up, if it's not on my calendar and stuff gets overlapped with it, like it's not really a priority, right? So if you look at my calendar, you have the very first thing I put in there is all my time with my kids. I have 50-50 custody with my ex-wife. I've got 3 small boys, ages 2, 3, and 4. So a lot of energy. When I'm with them, bro, there's no work getting done. Like
Yeah, you're
they
full
won't
out
allow me to pick
content.
up the phone.
Yeah,
They don't have the etiquette that, hey, daddy's on the phone, right? But I also don't want them to see somebody who's working constantly and slaving away. Like
sure.
I want them to see what a family man looks like. So I try to model that really well. So in my calendar, the first thing you're always going to see is I blocked off family time for the time that I have my boys, and I stick with it. Now, luckily, I've got a really good relationship with my ex-wife to where if I do have to work, because stuff comes up in this business, that we've got a really good, co-parenting situation where she can take the boys, I can go do what I need to do, come pick them up. So there's some flexibility in that. And number two, you talk about like fitness and wellness. Again, I want to model good behaviors for my kids, and taking good care of your body, eating right, being active. Those are all things that weren't necessarily modeled for me growing up, but I know them to be very important the further I get into life and just how good I feel. And a lot of that too is for mental clarity. So I get up early, and on the days I don't have my kids, I'm usually at the gym between 5:30 and 6 a.m. Obviously, I'm never going to have a real estate appointment at 5:30 in the morning. But
Yeah.
if you look at my calendar, at 5:30 in the morning is blocked off for gym time
Yeah.
every single morning. Um, so again, it's just like having the calendar and then sticking to it. And then a big part of that too, it's my mentality. So I don't know how much of this if we've ever even gotten into this, but 6 years ago I became sober. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic, and I let booze and partying really hijack a big part of my life. And fitness and faith and a number of other things are a big reason why I'm not in that lifestyle anymore. And when I talk about like mental health and mental clarity, I get a lot of that by being consistent with my fitness.
Yes. Yeah, I get
Like
that.
if I miss a workout in the morning, if I don't sweat in the morning because of one reason or another, the day just doesn't go as smooth.
Mhm.
And then I can justify not going the next day.
Yeah.
And then the next day, next thing you know, I'm in a rut. Next thing you know, I'm depressed. Next thing you know, I'm snapping at my kids. Right.
Yeah.
So all of it has to kind of flow pretty congruently and consistently in order to keep that up. So I put in my calendar, and one of the big rules that I really try to follow is, number one, don't cancel meetings, show up, right? Like if it's on the calendar, show up, but
Definitely.
especially don't cancel meetings with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine? And I asked my agents this a couple months ago. I'm going to ask them again, actually, this upcoming week, because I think it's a great question. Where would you be if you never canceled a meeting with yourself? And if you always did what you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
Like, if you made those 20 calls, if you showed up to those networking events, like where do you think you'd actually be? Right.
I think that's a good thing to really highlight. It's like I was actually at the Rise conference here recently. Alex Ramosi said, to like decide or determine like who you want to be, first decide like look at like who you don't want to be. Like if this successful person like shows up to working out and is always on time and makes the 20 calls and goes to the networking event, then like that's what you need to do, obviously, to be successful. Like, so it's not like what you feel you want to do, it's what you actually need to do in order to be successful. I do want to kind of piggyback on a second on something. The that transition from you kind of having that rough time with drugs and alcohol and then getting into fitness, and did you really use your drive and your passion to just basically devote all of your energy and effort towards working out? And I'm not sure if it's God or what your religion is, but whenever it came to like putting your mind on something else, like how did that look like, and what was that transition like?
Yeah. So I had already had a fitness base before all that.
Okay.
So I struggled with alcoholism and drug use since I was about 14 or 15 years old. And then in my mid and late 20s, early 30s, it was just out of hand.
Yeah.
Right. But I've been working out pretty consistently since my late teens, early 20s. I grew up really scrawny. Like, my junior year, I wrestled 135 pounds and I was 6'1".
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So
Super tall.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm rail skinny. And like, dude,
Yeah.
I didn't have to wait to get to 135. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
Huge
Uh,
there. Yeah.
so I mean, rail skinny. You were a wrestler, so you know the whole thing, cutting weight and all that. I didn't have to. In
Sure.
fact, the state athletic commission came in, like, they take body fat tests before the
You were too
year.
low.
They're like, dude, you can't wrestle below 135. Like,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So I'm out like eating Big Macs, and like,
Everyone's hating you.
everybody's like deprived, and like they're sitting in the sauna, and I'm just chilling, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I'll show up. Yeah. So I hated being skinny, dude. Clothes never fit. I was tall. I was awkward. I had like this giraffe neck thing going on. So I decided it was time to bulk up. And, fitness has always been a big part of my life, off and on. Like, I always loved the gym. And I would go through periods where, for 6 months, I would be so dialed in. My nutrition's great.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking as much. But then when I would go into party mode, I would lose a lot of that. And then kind of at the end of, what I call my rock bottom, it was just a really dark period. I completely given up on it. It's like, when you're, you know, intoxicated for 8 days straight and doing drugs, like, there's really no reason to go to the gym at that point. So,
Yeah.
but when I decided to get sober, I had to occupy my time somewhere. And I had gotten so used to occupying it with the wrong people, the wrong crowds, the wrong atmospheres, that I knew if I was going to stay alive, that I had to completely switch that around. So I literally deleted everybody from my phone, except for like maybe a dozen people. And those were people who believed in me for the right reasons. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't go out. I kept to myself for about 6 months. And during that 6 months period, I was doing 2 a days, 3 days in the gym. Anytime I had the urge to drink or call my drug dealer, I would go outside and I would sprint around my apartment complex. literally dead sprint until I was so freaking exhausted that the thought of doing drugs left me. And you would think that that would like keep me good for a couple hours. No, in 20 minutes, I was sprinting again, dude. Like it was literally that. And then I couldn't sleep at night. So
Yeah.
I would go back to the gym and I would work out. And through all that, I was very conscious of the, like there's a good thing and there's a bad thing, right? Like, yes, going out, being really fitness conscious, like that's a great thing, but I don't want to replace one addiction with another.
Correct.
So diving back into my faith, I've off and on had a relationship with God my entire, probably since I was about 18, 19. There was a girl I was dating, and one of the requirements to date her was I had to go to church with her. So I was like, all right, you're pretty good looking, so let's
Yeah.
go.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it completely changed my life.
Yeah.
During my downfall, like my dark periods, man, I was so pissed at God, not realizing that he was there with me the entire time. Right. So when I was coming out of that and I was rediscovering who I was, what was my identity when it wasn't partying? Because I'd spent so much of my life like in that, like I didn't know who I was. So I kind of eased up on working out 4 to 6 times a day, started diving back into my faith really heavy, working really hard. I mean, I took the first half of 2018 off. This is my second year in real estate.
Yeah.
My first year in real estate, I sold 17 houses. My second year, I took half the year off and I ended up closing 39 transactions.
Good gracious.
And that was all just like tenacity. I
Yeah.
knew that if I didn't fill my time with something productive, that I was going to go back to drugs and alcohol. And I just couldn't do that. So that hasn't always served me, though. I mean, I got to a point where work overconsumed me and stress was taking over my life. But one constant throughout all of that has been the fitness, and it really has become. It's about feeling really great. For me, it's a really it keeps my mind stable. That's one of the only hours of the day that's completely my own, and selfishly, I keep it my own.
Sure.
I've got so many buddies who like know everybody at the gym and they're saying what's up, and I don't know anybody at the gym, and they probably all think I'm
Headphones
the
in, you're
biggest
working
deal
out.
in
That's
the
it.
world. But it's my time alone, and I really, every rep is a chance to work on something, to focus, to concentrate, to get the contraction, to keep your breathing in check, right? There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And I try not to be sloppy with it, but getting that heart rate up and breathing hard. And maybe there's a day where it's like, I just don't feel it because I woke up and like, God, the snooze button sounds good.
Yeah.
Like I can either go hit the snooze button or I can go hit the coffee button, right? I'll go hit the coffee button, and just making that step, right? That adds momentum to your day.
Yeah.
Then when those days where you don't feel it and you're like, God, I don't really want to go. Sometimes those are your best workouts, man.
Absolutely.
You leave there drenched in sweat and you're like, hell yeah. So happy I got through with that. It just sets you up on just a whole nother level to start the day.
Well,
And then
absolutely. I
as
feel
a
like
byproduct, dude, you look fucking amazing. Am I
that's right.
right?
It's a great byproduct.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you get to look good, and and yeah, like there's so many great side effects other than like just the mental clarity and all
Yeah.
that.
But I think that's a huge aspect there. I mean, because real estate can be such a stressful job, and to have that 1 hour to completely turn off your brain when it comes to all the transactions, all the fires, all the clients that you might have when they're hitting you up just to say, you know what, this is my time. I'm gonna do what's best for me. Because I know if I show up at 100% for myself, I can then show up for 100% for everybody else that is depending on me. And that's all based on me showing up for myself the first part of the day. Um, I'm not sure if this is something you'd be open to sharing or not, but like, would you be having like any tips that people could maybe like work through or focus on when it comes to people that have maybe either struggled with drugs or alcohol that want to kick that habit and really get right back on the right path, the path that doesn't involve a lot of drugs and alcohol? What would be like some tips or recommendations you would have for them?
Yeah. So I've learned the hard way in a lot of this. Like I failed dozens of times to get clean before it stuck with me. And my first 2 years of sobriety have been way, way different than my previous, like The first 2 years of my sobriety are way different than the most recent 4 years of my sobriety.
Okay.
Um, for a number of different reasons, but number one, you just have to make that choice. So for me, and I was telling this story the other day, and I'm really open with it. I can still close my eyes and I can put myself in the room I was at when I was just sick and tired of feeling this way. I can feel my gut. I can smell the smell in the air. I know what music was playing. And I was so just disgusted with myself. And I knew like I never want to feel the way I do right now ever again. That was my experience. Some people don't have to get that far to realize they need to make a change or want to make a change. But that was it for me. And that's burned in my brain, man. Like burned in my brain. Never want that again. One of the things I went wrong with, like I already said, I cut everybody out of my life, right? I didn't take the time to reestablish good, solid relationships. So, especially with other men, like I cut out a lot of the relationships that I had with men at that time because a lot of the guys I was with were contributing to my downfall instead of my progress, right? But I didn't do a great job of reestablishing those relationships. So, the first couple years of my sobriety, I kept it in. I didn't want anybody to know that I went through that because I'm this real estate guy and I'm going to close 50 deals. And if my clients knew that I used to be a drug addict, well, they're just going to fire me.
Yeah.
So, what that caused for me, though, was a lot of anxiety. I was having panic attacks because I felt like I was showing up everywhere as a fraud. I walked into a church service one day and Kyle Morris is the pastor over at Revive Church in Arvada, Colorado. And
Mhm.
he was telling a story about the power of your story, like your testimony and how powerful that can be. And not just for other people, right? Like, because I might be able to inspire somebody with my testimony of getting clean and then building a business, right? But powerful for self. And he told my story with a lot of just different conditions to it, right?
Yeah.
But the underlying was the same. He had some things in his past and he was really into the pastor community. And if these pastors knew what he did when he was 18, 19, 20, 25, they would kick him out of the community. Right. And then it took one pastor to show up and say, no, this is my past. This is what I did. And then everybody in the room's like, well, I did that too. And oh,
Yeah.
well, I've got this. And none of us are perfect. Right.
Yeah.
So I walked in that church service. He told that story, and I immediately I found him after the service. This was my first time at that church, by the way, and it just happened to be
Uh,
the message for me for what I was going through. And God has a way of doing that.
absolutely.
I asked him to have coffee, and I sat down with him, and I told him my story. And he's like, "Man, you should tell that story to somebody." He goes, "How would you like to tell it to the church?" I was like, "Well, I was married at the time. I was like, let me talk to my wife. I don't necessarily know if she wants everybody to know that, I all this crap that I did. Cause I mean, I told him all the dirty details, man.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, he goes, that I like it doesn't have to be tomorrow. It could be 20 years from now, but consider telling your story. He said, but I also challenge you, go tell a bunch of people your story this week. He goes, and I just want to see like I want to check back in with you in a week or two and see if that's like relieved any of that anxiety or that stress that you're dealing with.
Mhm.
So I had a business coach at the time, and one of the things we do is we write a letter to our database every month, and it's a heartfelt letter about something that I care about.
Yeah.
Can't be real estate related. It's to make me a human to all these people who see me as this real estate robot, right?
Sure.
So I went in and I wrote a 4-page letter about getting sober and what I went through. And here's all the amazing things that have happened in my life since I cut out drugs and alcohol. Here's a bigger list of all the stuff that I'm still struggling with on a day-to-day basis. I took that letter on Friday afternoon and I sent it out to my company that handles all the mailings.
Yeah.
And I went to bed feeling pretty good. On Monday morning, I woke up like, holy crap, what have I done? I call my gal over at the printing company. I was like, hey, cancel the order. And she goes, oh, hey there, sweetheart. They went out about an hour ago. So
Oh,
I'm
man.
like, dude,
There you
my
go.
real estate career is over. Like, what's gonna happen? Like 3 or 4 days later, once it started hitting people's mailboxes,
Yeah.
my phone started blowing up.
Really?
I didn't get one bit of negative feedback. Everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much for sharing. I never knew you went through that. I respect you so much more because of all of that. Your boys are benefiting from you being a better dad because of all of this. And
Yeah.
hey, will you go meet with my husband because he's going through a tough time? Or hey, I've got a teenage son that's going down this path. Will you come talk to him?"
Yeah.
Like the amount of doors that it opened up for me. But what it really did was it released the power that it had over me. So like I kicked the drugs and alcohol,
Yeah.
but because I kept it hidden, it still had power over me.
I see. Yeah. So
So when I
letting
was
it,
able to like,
yeah.
yeah, so when I was able to expose it and tell people the story, like, hey, you know the worst thing about me, so try and hurt me with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
great thing too. I mean, I love that. Like just exposing like you could say like your greatest weakness and be like, all right, well that's it. Like that's all you got of me. Like and I'm
yeah,
just as human as everybody else. Yeah.
yeah. Use it against me. That's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
but then from there, it's being really intentional about telling the story
Mhm.
and being really open with it. You never know who you're going to impact or who's going to impact you or how you being open might change somebody's trajectory. It
Sure.
took for me one phone call. Like I had my old managing broker, the first guy, John Stegner, that I worked for, he oversaw me and he brought me into his office one day when I was in my, my drug heyday. And he's like, dude, you look like shit.
Yeah.
He goes, I care about you. He was sober at the time. He's like, I'm here for you. Like he just talked to me in that way, right?
Hmm.
That conversation is burned in my brain. And it was something probably so small to him, right? But that completely changed the trajectory of my life. So you never know, just being vocal and being open about things, who you're going to really impact. But then from there, it's continuing with it, right? So, like I said, I got rid of a lot of the relationships that I had, especially with like good, strong men. And for me, it's Christian men, right? I want to be around those people who share some of the same values, who value fatherhood, who want to be more like Jesus, who want to kind of, you know, go out into life and live that life and be just the light, right?
Yeah.
Show the light. So I've been really intentional about serving at my church. I've been really intentional about I organized a men's group where every other week we get together and we talk about our battle scars and what we're going through, and we pray for each other and we cry with each other and we laugh with each other. And it's a true brotherhood, and just being super intentional about not keeping your stuff in. I think
Yeah.
if you can tell your story to somebody, you can start to forgive yourself, and that can put you on a really good path towards getting rid of the negativity, whatever that habit is in your life, whether it's overeating, whether it's pornography, whether it's drugs and alcohol, whether it's rage, maybe you're mean to your kid, whatever it is, right? Just be open
Sure.
about it and talk to people. There's more people going through it than you think.
Absolutely. I think that's especially, I mean, with this real estate market, with relationships, with being a parent, being everything that we are, like having people that you can rely on and lean on in those tough times, that because those kind of different perspectives are what's going to usually give you the solution to overcome what you're struggling with, whether it's how to build a team or how to stop smoking weed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Hearing someone else's past experience and figuring out how they work through it usually helps, at least it helps me connect it in my brain, and it allows me to be like, okay, well, he did X, Y, and Z. Well, I should just try X, Y, and Z versus just trying to make up my own random solution. Like there's
Yeah.
someone else that's not already done it before you. So just talk to somebody that's gone through it.
And that's what our friend Colton calls the power of proximity, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Get
Absolutely.
around people who are doing the stuff that you want to do
Yeah,
and learn from them. Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Hey, would you be open to like sharing your contact information or maybe Instagram handle for people that are looking to get in contact with you?
Yeah, definitely. Instagram is at real_Nealon_Sean.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, Nealon is Nealon. Sean is the Irish way, Sean.
Love it.
So yeah, hit me up on Instagram, find me on Facebook, Sean Nealon. I think I have a LinkedIn. If you add me there, I probably won't. I probably won't check it.
Fair
So
enough. Fair
yeah,
enough.
that's probably the best way to get at me.
Awesome. Well, hey, Sean, I appreciate you being on and talk to you soon,
Yeah.
man.
Thanks for having me, Spencer. Good talking to you,
Sure. Thank
buddy.
you. Bye.